So I would like to welcome you to the Canada Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Research Network's webinar, Thinking About FASD Month, Uniting Our Strengths. Thank you all for joining us today on this Friday in July. And it seems a bit crazy to be thinking about FASD Month, which is in September, but it's always a lot of work, and these kinds of things are always more work than we think, and it takes more time, and Victoria can attest to that. I think we're at how many people? Yeah, 42 people. There might be a few folks that continue to sign in, but feel free to put in the chat where you're located and your respective treaty territory. So I'm Kathy Unsworth. I'm the Managing Director at CanFASD, and I work with all of these lovely folks on all kinds of different projects, and it's my privilege to work with them. I'm going to talk about CanFASD's land acknowledgement, and we are very committed to reconciliation at CanFASD, and it is one of our strategic priorities. In fact, an important step in reconciliation is the acknowledgement of traditional treaty lands and recognition for the people of the territory. CanFASD recognizes the historical significance and contributions of Indigenous peoples and their cultures, and understands the important role that the Indigenous community plays today and in the future. We acknowledge that we live, work, and meet on traditional territories across Canada of many of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. So before we get going, just a couple of housekeeping items. One is that we are recording this presentation, and it will be available on the CanFASD YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. And there's lots of great things on our YouTube channel. So make a note to check it out. And this Zoom has the Q&A function, so participants can ask questions and even upvote those questions, so that the most common ones or most wanted answered ones will rise to the top. So there'll be time after the presentation for the speakers to answer those questions and also put any other ones forward. So I'm going to introduce the presenters for today. We have Lindsay Wolfson, Dr. Nancy Poole, Victoria Bailey, and Tammy Roberts. So first off is Lindsay Wolfson. She's a researcher with CanFASD and the research manager at the Center of Excellence for Women's Health. Lindsay Wolfson holds a Master's of Public Health, Social Inequities and Health from Simon Fraser University. She's currently responsible for research and collaboration on projects relating to FASD prevention, integration of gender, trauma, culture, and equity-informed approaches into policy research and practice. So thank you, Lindsay. I'm good. Do I introduce everybody now? Is that what I should do? Yes. Tori's nodding her head. Okay. All right. Buckle up. We got more. We have Dr. Nancy Poole, and she is the director of the Center of Excellence for Women's Health and Research and Knowledge Exchange Center, hosted by the BC Women's Hospital and Health Center in Vancouver. In that role, she leads network development, research, and knowledge exchange related to improving policy and service provision on girls and women's health. Nancy is the prevention lead for the CanFASD Research Network and recently sat on the scientific committee that prepared Canada's guidance on alcohol and health. In 2021, Nancy was awarded an honorary doctorate by the Justice Institute of BC in recognition of her contributions to women's health, including trauma-informed practice and the treatment of substance use and addiction. Victoria Bailey is our manager of communications, or director of communications. Tori, you don't put your title here, so. She received her BA of Arts and Science degree from the University of Guelph and her Master's of Science Communication degree from Laurentian University. Her master's research was conducted in partnership with the Public Health Sudbury and districts and focused on developing effective message frameworks to communicate information about the social determinants of health. We are also joined by Tammy Roberts. Tammy Roberts has been a committed professional parent since 1991, providing emergency and long-term care to approximately 250 foster children in NWT and youth with mild to extreme learning and behavior disabilities. She continues to provide long-term care to individuals and that have been prenatally exposed to drugs and alcohol as a foster and adoptive parent. Tammy has 9 children and 7 grandchildren, and she's extremely proud of them for of them all. For many years, Tammy has served as the Yellowknife Foster Family Associate President and cultivated her parenting skills through training, which has enabled her to deliver FASD workshops locally, territorially, and nationally. Tammy has been a support to many children and parents across the North, and because of this was recognized with the Golden Jubilee Medal in 2002 for her contribution to the community, and was a finalist for the Lynn Factor Stand Up for Kids Award in 2019. She's been the executive director of the Foster Family Coalition of the Northwest Territory since 2009, and in this position facilitates pride training and provides support to foster and adoptive parents and child protection workers across the territory. She's also the executive of Canadian Foster Family Association and her local Royal Canadian Legion. So I will pass it over to the presenters now.
Thanks so much, Kathy. What a wonderful lineup of people to be joined by today. So Nancy and I are going to start us off today thinking a little bit about prevention and how we can raise awareness during FASD month, and also think about the disability alongside. And we really want to start by acknowledging the lands in which we are joining from today. We are joining from, I'm here from the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, the Credit First Nation, Mississauga, and Wendake and Winsento peoples. And Nancy is joining from the traditional and unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, including the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanich peoples. And as we have here on the screen, we are both very committed to upholding the calls to action and calls to justice, and most pointedly, we'll be speaking to call to action number 33 on FASD prevention today. So I think it's really helpful to start off with some foundational elements. So when we're thinking about FASD prevention, we're talking about this sort of multifaceted model, these efforts that include broad awareness raising and health promotion efforts, as highlighted in gray. We have discussions around alcohol and related issues, specialized support during pregnancy and postpartum, and supportive alcohol and child welfare policies. And often in relation to FASD Awareness Month, we look more specifically at those two emboldened areas, particularly level 1 initiatives, as we raise awareness of both FASD prevention and FASD itself. And when we're curious and thinking about what FASD prevention and specifically level 1 could look like, it includes health promotion, things like Canada's guidance on alcohol and health, warning labels, and really the basis for today's presentation is awareness and health education. And so we're going to talk about these important principles to consider when making FASD and FASD prevention campaigns based off of best practice and evidence, and also thinking through CanFASD language and images guide. In addition to the 4-part model, we also have these 10 fundamental components of FASD prevention. And I think it's really important that we think about these values that guide our work, because in all prevention efforts, we should make sure that the work that we're doing is respectful, relational, self-determining, women plus centered, harm reduction oriented, trauma and violence informed, health promoting, culturally safe, supportive and mothering, and that we do celebrate strengths and adopt an FASD informed and disability lens in the work that we do. And I think that some of these can feel really challenging to do in the level or in the context of level 1 prevention efforts, or in the context of FASD Awareness Month. For instance, how can we make a poster that's relational? But as we'll come back to, and Nancy will demonstrate later in the presentation, by having information for women, gender diverse people and their support networks to learn about alcohol and pregnancy, or having events like mocktail nights, it's certainly feasible to do so. This is the last piece that I really think is helpful to help us set the stage. And it's about reflecting on what we know about alcohol and pregnancy, including the reasons why alcohol may be used. And this can include women not knowing that they are pregnant, not knowing about FASD, or underestimating the harms of alcohol use during pregnancy. Alcohol is increasingly the social norm, and may be the case in their particular group, which can make it really difficult to abstain out of fear of judgment or questioning. Women may use alcohol to cope with trauma or other stressors, or may struggle with addiction and dependency. But it's also really important that we recognize that most women do stop or reduce their alcohol consumption when planning a pregnancy or when they learn that they are pregnant. And that stigma and the social norms surrounding alcohol and advertising that's increasingly targeted to women, and especially mothers, can make it all the more challenging to stop doing. And so this was actually something that we came out with last year, both the Center and CanFASD, for FASD Awareness Month. And it walks through what we know about alcohol and pregnancy, including the reasons for use, what can make it challenging to seek support, and ways that providers across the 4-part model are able to offer support to address these challenges. And when we're thinking about creating a campaign, and this is maybe the last thing I'll say before I pass it over to Nancy, we can consider these different elements, and this is on the CanFASD website, but we should ensure that all of our efforts are understandable, they're noticeable, but in a way that influences and encourages information seeking. The title of this presentation is all about our strengths, and so certainly we want to ensure that it is strengths-based, and it conveys how we can be making positive change. We should be thinking about recall, our awareness campaigns, activities, things like this, in a place that they will invite recall, and are they integrated in other activities? For example, if we think about like a warning label on an alcohol bottle, these are low-cost population health effort. There is some research that suggests that warning labels are most effective when they are combined with other prevention strategies, including posters, informational pamphlets, and engagement with health and social service providers. So there are lots of ways that we can think about these emboldened principles when creating prevention efforts and in advance of FASD Prevention Month. So I'm going to pass it over to Nancy, who's going to walk through some of the prevention principles.
So thanks, Lindsay. You packed a lot in there. I'm just going to speak for a minute or two to these 4 principles that we feel are really important to apply when we're doing prevention efforts. So as well as thinking about the practical pieces about campaigns that Lindsay just mentioned, it can be super helpful to us to always be guided by some core principles. And these are some that were developed by a group in Australia who've done an amazing amount of prevention work on prevention of violence against women. So we're just taking those up and applying them to the FAS prevention world. So I want to start with the do no harm part. And I think this is our biggest challenge in FAS prevention, that there's still so much stigma surrounding FASD and its prevention. And often, even while it may be unintentional, campaigns can really further perpetuate stigmatization. For instance, the campaign on the bottom there can perpetuate the stigmatizing belief that women who use alcohol in pregnancy are irresponsible or somehow lacking love for their children, rather than recognizing there are many reasons why women may use alcohol in pregnancy, which can be everything from using it to cope, to trying to avoid violence from a partner if they reduce their alcohol use, or because their healthcare provider didn't provide accurate information to them. So there are some campaigns that are so jarring, they isolate women because of the public portrayal. And that means that harm is caused. So instead, we think about how messages can have a really big impact and encourage messaging like, it's never too late to cut back, or no alcohol is safest, trying to pull people in and help them see themselves positively as having the capacity to make changes at no matter what stage they're at. And, in the CanFASD language guide, they really talk lots about the language and images. And on the right-hand side here are some examples we contributed in terms of the language use and making sure that it's really dignity promoting. And, one of the things we point out there that while FASD can be prevented, messages like saying it's 100% preventable can really be isolating and shaming and marginalizing of people who know they've already used alcohol and we really want to pull them in to continue to do the best they can. And so while the health of a baby can be a motivator to stop drinking, slogans that use scare tactics or suggest that women who drink or have had a drink in pregnancy are uncaring or somehow irresponsible can create shame and guilt and prevent women from seeking support. So have a look at some of that languaging. Now, the imaging is also important. And as you saw in that last one with a naked woman with her belly poking through a big poster, I think, we really want to acknowledge just how important it is to make it engaging and to make it dignity oriented. So let's take a look at the next one, which is the gender transformative approach. Now, this one is interesting because it has two goals of trying to think about, as we're doing FAS prevention or other health promoting work, how can we actually be promoting gender equity at the same time? And when we're thinking about FAS prevention, that can mean really consciously engaging boys and men in partnership with women and girls on reproductive health issues. So actually trying to move that along so that the responsibility doesn't fall only on the shoulders of women. We also, of course, want to always be engaging and empowering women to make change and to do the best they can during pregnancy around reducing or stopping alcohol use. And always in our work, we can be focusing on promoting equity-oriented attitudes and norms and practices. And some of the posters on here are really gender transformative in that sense of thinking about sharing responsibility, engaging boys and men, and making women feel supported and empowered in their decisions. So next one is about tailoring to the audience and, so many different audiences. And sometimes prevention campaigns really have this challenge of being inclusive and universal, but also think in some cases being more effective when they're tailoring to a specific audience or a local context. For instance, it could mean you link to culture or you offer social support before pregnancy recognition, like the pre-testy bestie picture here from New Zealand. Or by naming how challenging change can be and, talking about how friends can help friends in it and making the importance of small steps and, such as using mocktails instead of cocktails, really trying to image what we're trying to help people in certain audiences think about. Now, it's interesting in thinking about the audience, the one on the right side there about the coffee bar. This Yukon campaign was award-winning and really effective in Whitehorse. But when a campaign in Nunavut was being created, they realized that the other territories, that territory's approach wouldn't work for them because it implied that folks could easily access a coffee bar, which is not true in Nunavut. So really trying to think about your audience and your local context and how you can tailor your approach to them. And finally, the last of these principles is really thinking about being evidence informed and thinking about quality practice. And as a researcher, this part I think is really super important, that we think about what we know about effective prevention. And one of the aspects of it is thinking about what level of threat are you putting in your campaigns. Because if the threat's too low, you won't be able to move people. If the threat's too high, you may totally drive them away. So the important thing is to really work for that bottom row effort of trying to balance the sense of threat with the fact that women can take action and their partners and communities. So trying to think about how do you balance the level of threat with what can be done. And so the evidence shows that when you deal with that bottom low row effort of balance between the two, that's when you'll have the most positive response, like increase in knowledge, reinforcing of positive behaviors, sharing of information with others. So these campaigns, in essence, come back to those 10 fundamental components that Lindsay showed, in that they are harm reducing and strengths-based. They emphasize social support and collective responsibility and offer links to further information. So lastly here, I just want to give, Lindsay and I have been involved in respecting these two examples along the way. The one on the left is a poster, and the language elicits change and includes links of phone numbers that people can reach out to. And it prompts women in their communities to not only seek more information about alcohol use in pregnancy, but also to start a conversation with their health and social service provider. And it really recognizes that that can be challenging, and that for some women and girls, it may be that it's really helpful to have a website link to begin. And so you can start by seeking information from a website to get accurate and reliable information without fear of judgment or stigma or punitive approaches. So we really see this as a great model. And the one on the right is a booklet. It's not a campaign, but it's just kind of a reminder that we can be sharing information about changing alcohol use in the pre-conception period and planning that change before you're pregnant. And it is a booklet that we have available on our website and the CanFASD website that really can be used year-round around this idea of getting ready for pregnancy by reducing or stopping your alcohol use. So that's it for Lindsay and I for today. And here's all the ways in which we keep alive these things we've been talking about, both through CanFASD and through the Center of Excellence.
Thank you, Nancy and Lindsay. That was great. We have Tori up next.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. All right. So hi everyone, my name is Victoria Bailey. You heard the introduction from me a little bit earlier with Kathy, but I am the communications manager with CanFASD. And Nancy and Lindsay gave a great overview of some of the best practices for FASD prevention messaging. I'm going to talk to you about some of the FASD awareness messaging best practices in general, and then some of our plans at CanFASD for FASD Awareness Month. But before I start, I just want to personally acknowledge the lands that I live, work, and play on. I am in Ontario on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe people under the Williams Treaty territories, so just a little bit north of Toronto. So I hope everyone is aware September is FASD month, and September 9th is FASD Awareness Day, celebrated both nationally and internationally. And I know Kathy said it seems crazy that it's coming up, but I just want to give a little fact. There's actually only 56 days left until FASD Awareness Day, so it is coming up so quickly, and that's why we're all here. Before I get into some of the best practices, I want to give a little bit of an overview of what FASD awareness actually looks like in Canada. So we often talk about the need for more awareness, the need and this idea that if we just tell people, if we just reach out to more people, like things will change. The problem is that just telling people isn't often enough to A, get them to remember what you told them, or B, get them to change their minds. So the Frameworks Institute did a study in 2017 that mapped the gaps between expert and public understanding of FASD, specifically in Manitoba, but we can kind of extrapolate some of those findings to the rest of Canada for lack of the rest of the data. And there were a few key findings. Versus the people were actually familiar with FASD. They referred to it often as FAS or fetal alcohol, but they generally knew what it was. They understood that it's a range of impacts, but they didn't really use the term spectrum. And then these are the important things. People thought that because people with FASD have permanent brain damage, they think that social supports and resources won't actually make a difference. And they revert back to this thought process that drinking during pregnancy is largely the responsibility of the mother. And this contributes to this huge fatalistic perspective surrounding FASD, that they believe there's nothing ultimately that can be done to prevent FASD or improve outcomes for people with this disorder. And this is a huge problem in communications because we know that that's not true. We know that effective supports and services can help people with FASD succeed, help families to succeed, help women and girls to have healthy pregnancies. We have all of those wraparound supports and resources we need, but we need to overcome that fatalistic perspective when we talk about awareness to make sure that we can have those effective resources and supports put into place and have some background behind that. So there's definitely more details about FASD awareness in Canada in that report than what I just shared. So if you're involved in FASD communications at all and haven't taken a look at that, I would highly suggest you do. I have a soft spot for the Frameworks Institute because I based my master's research around how they do their work. So definitely take a look at that. So just a little overview. We saw a lot of key misinformation that's continuing to be perpetuated. And one way we need to address this misinformation before we can start raising awareness or while we raise awareness. And one way we can do that is by making sure we're sharing evidence-based information, making sure we have consistent messaging, that we're using non-stigmatizing language, we're incorporating the voices of those with lived experience, and we're taking strength-based approaches. And at CanFASD, we know that creating a campaign is time consuming and resource intensive. So we are taking the lead on kind of drafting that messaging and graphics for FASD Awareness Month. So you can build on those resources within your own communities. As Nancy said, some of these campaigns work better in specific communities when you have that community connection there. So taking some of what we've done originally and tailoring it to community is a great way of making our resources extend further when we are working with such limited resources. So last year, our theme was focused on building strengths and abilities. Historically, a lot of the discussion, as we know, has been around challenges with people with FASD, and that's likely contributed to that big fatalistic perspective that we talked about. But we know it's equally, if not more important, to talk about the strengths and abilities, because those also provide those springboards for effective strength-based solutions. So this year, our theme is uniting our strengths, finding solutions together. So that calls back a little bit to last year's strengths portion, but the key additions here focus on that collaboration connection piece, and then that finding real world solutions piece. And there's a reason for that. So we talked before, major barrier to awareness and support is that fatalistic perspective that ultimately nothing can be done to prevent FASD or improve outcomes with this disorder because it's either like too complex of an issue or they don't see it as an issue that impacts them or is that's their responsibility. So it kind of echoes back to what Nancy and Lindsay were talking about in the risk statement category. Oftentimes we're framing FASD with too much of like, it's too big of an issue. We can't deal with it. We need to change how we're doing our messaging around FASD to show where our solutions can be put into place and when we can see successes. So yeah, one way we can address that is by sharing those detailed solutions to complex issues to show that these issues are solvable. So we have, and we do continue to see real progress and change for FASD and FASD prevention in Canada. Even when I first started 4 years ago, I've seen this massive growth in this community. Many organizations and advocates have these like innovative solutions to how they create and deliver services. I'm seeing community members come to researchers and say, hey, we have this issue, and researchers taking it back and saying, yeah, this is what we found when we do research on it, and then coming back as a group and trying to find these incredible solutions. So being able to share those stories of those solutions that are creating successes is a great way of moving awareness forward and countering that fatalistic perspective. So when you look at sharing stories with solutions, framework suggests that the solutions we talk about in our stories must fit the scope of the problem. So again, we don't want to make the problem seem too overwhelming to solve. We don't want to put too much focus on the problem. 2, they must provide a sense of efficacy. So we need to show the success. We need to show that it works, that the issue can be fixed, and that systems can actually be empowered to do it, to do the fixing. And 3, it must be presented with sufficient explanation. So it's not enough to just say, hey, we need resources and supports. We have to give details on exactly how the solution was achieved and how it led to positive outcomes. So what does that look like in practice? I'm just going to give an example that I just pulled, the Manitoba FASD courts. So if we were talking about this and wanted to share a solution, we could say, we see an overrepresentation of people with FASD in the justice system because it's not set up to support them. We may see them reoffend, they struggle to navigate the system and struggle to get the supports that they actually need. So that's the problem that we've set out. It's not too big of a problem, it's solvable. And then we talk about the solution. So Manitoba set up a new court. It was actually the first of its kind in Canada to help people with FASD navigate the support system and connect them with specialized supports as part of their sentences, like a diagnostic and assessment, as well as service providers. The courts also consider how FASD diagnosis may or may not have influenced action when they're doing sentencing. So that is the solution. It gives a little bit more detail about how the solution actually works. What are the players involved? What are the actual activities that are being done? And then the success piece, the efficacy piece. This has been a huge success. Demand has exceeded the capacity for what the courts can actually provide. And it jumped from doing it 2.5 days a month to 7 days a month. So talking about FASD in the context of these stories that share solutions is a big piece of what we want to do in FASD Awareness Month. And I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go into this in detail, but this document also has some really amazing examples of those sort of strength-based solutions, particularly in the prevention realm. So I really highly suggest you go look at that if you want some more examples as well. It's the Indigenous Approaches to FASD Prevention, Revitalizing Culture and Healing booklet that I think Nancy and Lindsay had a major part in creating. Okay, so that was the background behind FASD Month, why we did our theme, some best practices around awareness. Now, what is CanFASD doing for FASD Month? I'm going to talk about Red Shoes Rock, Canada Rocks Red, and community events. So the number one thing is to encourage people to wear red for September 9th and during FASD Month. That's not a new thing we're doing. It's been in the community forever. Red shoes is a symbol of FASD awareness, and we're kind of taking that and running with it. Red Shoes Rock is a volunteer organization. They're community-led, they're international, and the symbol is red shoes. It's a pretty easy one for people to get involved in and put their own spin on. And there's a great blog on our website by RJ Formanak on why red shoes. I cannot do it justice by paraphrasing myself, so I would really highly suggest you take a look at that to understand some of the background behind why this campaign has taken off. And this is some of the examples of like, it is very social, like it's a very easy social movement to get involved in. People can share their own voices, share their own stories, put their own spin on it. And this is where we're talking about, if you want to get into the theme and share stories about solutions, that's kind of the text you could maybe use along with a picture. So you're kind of showcasing those solution-based things, but also still bringing in that Red Shoes piece. So that's Red Shoes Rock. We're also going to talk about Canada Rocks Red. So last year we ran a new initiative to get landmarks across in Canada and major cities to light up red for FASD Day. As you may remember, the Queen passed on September 8th last year. So it did impact some of our FASD month or FASD Day activities on September 9th, including some of the monument light ups, as many were in periods of mourning. But in total, we had 31 landmarks lit up in 10 provinces, and we want to get more this year. So this year, CanFASD personally has contacted 43 locations, and we have 25 confirmed so far, including Niagara Falls and Sails of Light. And we also really do welcome community submissions. So we have a form on our website. If you talk to a building or monument or landmark in your city and they agree to light up red for FASD Day, feel free to fill out that form and we'll add that to our list of locations. So for example, the city of Fredericton, there was a couple buildings lit up red, and that was actually a community submission by one of our family advisory committee members. And that was it's really cool to see. And then you can see how big it can get. Like the CN Tower was lit up, and the CN Tower itself shared that they were lighting up red. So it's kind of become, we want it to be an even bigger movement than it was last year, but we really want to continue that because we thought it was really cool. These are the landmarks that have agreed to light up so far. There's a select few that are unavailable for September 9th. So they have alternate dates for illumination, and then one or two that weren't actually able to light up red, but they'll still be lighting up just with alternate colors. So all of the details are available on our website, including the full list of locations. And finally, I just want to talk about community events. We are really restricted as a national network with how we can connect with people. It's usually just digitally. And that doesn't lend itself really well to creating change and awareness that is actually lasting. Whereas community-based events are so important because you can create connections with the community, you can build trust, and build connection in those physical spaces. So here are some examples of some great suggestions that are great things community members have done, community organizations have done for FASD Day previously, including awareness walks, community barbecues and lunches. They put lawn signs, posters, billboards in their cities, and that's actually the bottom right photo was from South Alberta FASD Network. Put up lawn signs all around their community during COVID, and it was like a cool way to see how communities can shift and adapt to what their local needs are. Can also paint rocks red with red shoes. That's what the top photo is. We had community members during COVID painting rocks and then putting them on local trails so people can pick it up, learn a little bit about FASD, and then put it back. So again, a great way of people adapting and connecting with their communities, depending on what their community's needs are, and meeting where their community members are at. Also, go see the lights. Like if you're in a community where something is being lit up red for FASD, maybe get a group together and go watch it. We would love to see pictures of the landmarks being lit up in your community. We had a few submissions from last year. So if you do see a monument being lit up, please take a picture, send it to us at our info line or tweet us, put it on social media, and we'll reshare it because that's a really exciting thing to see. We also have a form available on our website. We'll be putting up FASD awareness events across Canada on the site. So it's kind of a repository where if anyone's looking for FASD or information, they can, and looking to get involved, they can kind of come here and say, okay, what's going on in my community? So if you are running an FASD awareness campaign or event, feel free to fill out the form that is still up on our website. We can put it up on the site so people can find out what's going on with you. And finally, these are the resources we will have available for FASD month. There's the 2023 toolkit that explains a little bit about the background behind the theme, an information and social media kit, social media graphics that are easily downloaded, plug and play kind of situation, the list of community events I talked about, the list of landmark light ups that I talked about. And then new this year, we're looking at doing a template news release. So this would be something that community organizations can download, populate some of the local information, and then send to media within their area. Again, trying to alleviate some of that resource intense pieces and allow you to put more resources into what's actually going on in your community. Ideally, we wanted that package ready before this webinar, but life happens. So it will be out sometime next week. I will send an email around to all of our webinar attendees as well as to our networks with all this information, but you can also find it at www.fasdmonth.ca, or in French, it will be available later in the summer at moidutsaf.ca. So thank you so much for listening. How you can help, follow us, download the toolkits, download the resources, and then engage with FASD Awareness Month activities in your area. If you do have any questions or want more information or just want to chat with me, feel free to reach out, and I'll also put my email in the chat. But
Thank you, Tori.
Yeah, no worries.
And last but not least is Tammy Roberts.
Oh my goodness. Every time I try and share my screen, it messes up. In the meantime, one thing I should have said in my bio, which I didn't, is that I am also involved with CanFASD as the, I was the co-chair of the Family Advisory Committee. So that's my involvement in connection with CanFASD. I'm just going to take a look at my presentation. What I am going to talk about, now that I don't have the presentation in front of me, is the how in the Northwest Territories we have worked together in order to celebrate or support or raise awareness through FASD month. In Yellowknife, I am really proud to be joining you from Chief Dry Geese Territory, which is the traditional homelands of the Yellowknife Stene First Nation and the North Slave Métis Alliance. And what I do here, did say in my bio, I'm involved with the Foster Family Coalition. I'm also involved with Home Base Yellowknife, which supports youth that are experiencing homelessness between the ages of 12 and 24. And so we provide support for them. So part of that program that we run is a program that shows what we're doing with FASD awareness. And we also make sure that we involve the youth that we have either working for us that have a diagnosis of FASD, or the ones that we're supporting. So what we've done in the past is super important that we engage with the community. So some of the things that we've done in the past is, of course, advertising on social media, sharing information with other partners. So we work really closely with Health and Social Services. We work closely with both the youth and adult FASD diagnostic team. City of Yellowknife is very supportive. We reach out to local politicians that have been really fabulous in supporting us in the past. And then, of course, other community groups and businesses. The theme that I see in other presentations is that switch to being positive. And I look at everything from a very grassroots way. And when I'm working with individuals with this diagnosis or any of my children, I know it's beneficial to talk about what we should do and not what we shouldn't do. So I take the same approach when we're looking at awareness in the community. And what we do is try and create this positive examples of what the community should do. And so in community engagement, we have partnered with a lot of people. It doesn't work well when you just try and promote something on your own. And we've been really, really grateful to partner with Northwest Territories Liquor and Cannabis Commission. And they've been really supportive with us in the past, helping us with some community events as well as our posters, which I'm really going to try hard to put in the link, but it can't multitask because we have some awesome posters. We also partner with other organizations that are involved in youth, and we've been doing this a lot. So that would be our local friendship center, Home Base Yellowknife, some other groups, as well as the schools. So we try and get everybody involved so that we're able to have a community impact on getting awareness out. In the past, pre-pandemic, we started with a community barbecue that was held at City Hall and made it really fun. We had lots of really good music that was provided by youth. We did a little thing where we went around and interviewed people and gave them some simple questions about FASD with 3 answers that they could choose, made it really easy so everyone could get the right answer, provided gift certificates for them. Our poster campaign was really, really great, and we're able to have the NWT Liquor and Cannabis Commission logo on it. So with that, any liquor serving establishment in the Northwest Territories needs to have our posters visible. And they're all really positive and focusing on what you should do instead of what you shouldn't do. So an example is people sitting around playing bingo. It says, "You're pregnant, you think? We won't have a drink." Another one is people sitting around eating pizza, eating for 2, "I'll stay sober with you." Our third one is "You're pregnant, you say? We won't have a drink today," and it has people out snowshoeing. So when we launched these first 3 posters, they actually went really far. I was reached by a lot of people, even from some from outside of Canada, about being able to share them and use them, which we're always really happy to do. And our last poster that we did last year is a couple of people paddleboarding. It says, "The funnest activities are alcohol free." So trying to promote alcohol free activities for people, which are more supportive, because we all know if anyone is struggling, if you throw what they're struggling with in their face, it does not give them the encouragement to make change. We're also looking at adding to the posters this year and doing a 5th one, maybe more geared towards men and boys. And we're excited to have that one come out. Also on last year in Yellowknife, I see we have a few people on from Yellowknife. We have a giant muskox at City Hall that's planted with flowers every year. The community named him Elon Musk. And what we did last year was I made some flannel red shoes with laces, and we put red shoes on Elon. A lot of people were talking in the community, wondering what that was about. We also did a bit of a scavenger hunt, and it was all around City Hall area. So what we're planning on doing this year is, again, doing our community barbecue at City Hall with support through NWT Liquor and Cannabis Commission. We're going to do dress up Elon again with some red shoes with white laces. As I said, we're going to do that 3rd poster that is an addition to the series that we already have going, and another scavenger hunt around the city that has questions and simple answers or multiple choice for people to get them on to the next spot. And we really engage our youth in this. And I find when you engage youth, adults tend to be more happy to come forward and be supportive. So And we're also going to look this year to see if we can find some place in the city where we can have some red lights, whether they're just on the front of our building. But definitely anything that we can do to support, we're happy to do in the Northwest Territories. And I can see having the same activity each year, but building on it seems to be what's best for our community. I know it's different everywhere, but that's what we're going to continue to do, is just build on what we're already doing, so that hopefully we can engage everyone. Thanks so much.
That's great. Thank you, Tammy. Such amazing, interesting stuff happening. And I don't see any more questions. So I think if it's okay with everybody, we'll sign off.
Great. Thanks so much.
Enjoy your.
Kathy and Tori and Lindsay and Tammy. It was so great to present with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. It was nice to see everybody, and thanks to everybody who joined us. And we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.